The only reason why I was doing this is because I said to myself, people need to know this, men need to know this. And I was actually really passionate about the stuff that I was reading and just wanting to share it. What does it actually mean to be a man? And the reason why this question popped up is because technically what it felt like my own experience with the masculine, or, what made me a man, was just completely taken away from me. That image that would pop up became a whole movie. And I saw and remembered what happened to me as a child, and when I was about 6 or 7 years old, I was sexually abused by my father.
Malcolm, welcome to Triangle Theory.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. It's an honor to be here.
Amazing stuff. Yeah, Malcolm, I guess starting things off, I wanted to ask, could you share any pivotal moments that led you to focus on men's development and couples coaching?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it boils down to one experience, one shift, I'll call it an initiation or a threshold that occurred in my life when I wasn't. So 7 years ago is when I started this journey. I'm 37 years old, so it's really when I turned 30 that I really got into this actual space of understanding what it meant to be a man. And it was actually sobriety that brought me into this. So I struggled with addiction, especially on my, you know, from the years of 29 to 30. That's where it really got really intense, where I was just using all sorts of substances to not feel what needed to be felt, and to really um avoid and numb. And it was my way of regulating myself. And truly, I thought that I was living a normal life. Although every morning for me was extremely difficult. I was thinking of ending my life, and and then the second the substances would get into my body, I'd sort of forget the pain, and I just kept moving on like that until one day you know I sort of yeah, I sort of received a message um that came out of nowhere. And whether it was my higher self or something deep inside of me speaking to me, telling me that, hey, clearly, if you continue down this path, it's going to end in a very bad way, and maybe there's another way. And from that point, well, I gave myself an opportunity, I gave myself a chance, and that's where I went into rehab. And the rehab I went to was a treatment center that was based on a 12-step program. And from there, I started just going into what we call recovery, recovering from addiction, from all these substances that I was using. And for the first time, I felt like I could be in a room with people that could understand me, people that, weren't judging me or criticizing me, but more so looking at me and saying, hey, bro, you know what you did? Like, me too. And so I feel you and I hear you and I understand you. And for the first time, I really somewhat felt the power of community, the power of being able to actually finally understand that I'm not alone, right? And and from that point, I just kept on going into my journey of recovery. And through that, meeting other recovering addicts or alcoholics, started to see the lifestyle that they lived and they built. And it was all of these people became extreme athletes, or people that really brought their extremeness in one side to the other. And I started learning from them and started living a life where it was still extreme, but it was extreme on the other side of the spectrum. It was no longer towards substances, but more so towards wellness and health. And I remember in my peak, I was training to run a marathon. I was meditating 2 hours a day. I was reading 10 pages a day. I was doing 75 hard. I was going crazy. Like, I was just like, all right, let's push, let's push. Which in a way was just another form of avoidance, still moving me away from what actually needed to be seen. And it was actually through a connection with a woman that, after 2 years of sobriety, I started opening myself up to possibility of being with a person. And this woman came into my life, and I'd remember when I was going to meetings and I would hear people speak of their sexual abuse, of how they were sexually abused as children, and what happened to them. I could remember every time I would hear it, it's like an image would pop up, something would pop up. But then right away, I would hear, it's like my mind would say, no, that didn't happen to you. No, that didn't happen to you. So the whatever image would come up would be just shoved back under the rug, until I met this woman, and I had this deep sense of connection with her. And one day she just opened herself up to me and started expressing how, something that happened to her as a child. And while she was expressing that story, and what it was is basically her sharing how she was sexually abused as a child, I remember my body just being starting to shake, started having tears coming out of my eyes. And I remember I said to her, I'm sorry, I'm making this about me right now, and I don't know why this is happening. And then all of a sudden, that image that would pop up became a whole movie. And I saw and remembered what happened to me as a child. And when I was about 6 or 7 years old, I was sexually abused by my father. And so that story came out, and I started remembering everything. And mind you, this is during COVID, during lockdowns, and I lived in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and that was one of the worst places when it came to lockdowns. Like we stayed in lockdown longer than anyone. And so here I am with this whole experience that has come out from the shadow, and feeling all of the emotions and all of the all everything that was basically intertwined with that experience coming out, and me feeling all of it, and not knowing who to ask for support, not knowing who to speak to, but luckily having some tools that I've acquired through recovery, breathing, meditation, reaching out to someone. And that's what I did, until I found this sort of um this line, this number for men who are sexually abused. And I decided to give them a call and see, what were my options.
Hey guys, thank you so much for making it this far into the podcast. If you have any feedback, then please let us know, as we always want to make this podcast better. So hearing from you is always a pleasure. Please subscribe to all of our platforms, get involved at Triangle Theory. If you've got any comments, or if you want to share any topics that you think that me and Conrad would like to talk about, then please get involved. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much.
And a woman on the phone just told me that, hey, I want you to know that this happens actually quite often. A lot of men remember their abuse years later. So for the first time, I was like, oh wow, okay, so I am not alone again. And I remember when I spoke to her, she was so nice to me, and she told me, we can find you support, and we actually have a program that allows you to have access to a therapist for free. And would you be interested in that? All you have to do is fill out a form. I'm like, yeah, of course. If I have access to speak to someone for free, of course I want to do that. And then she told me, once the form is filled out, you're going to be on a wait list for 6 months. And then I was like, wait a second, like 6 months that I have to wait? Like, who do I speak to now? Like, I'm going through all of this right now. And then something inside of me just said, Malcolm, like, just hang up the phone. Thank this lady and hang up the phone. And that's what I did. I said, hey, thank you for your support. Thank you for your help. I guess I'm going to try and figure this out. And I hung up the phone, and then this question popped up. And the question that popped up was, well, what does it actually mean to be a man? Right. And the reason why this question popped up is because technically my own manhood, what it felt like, my own experience with the masculine, or what made me a man, was just completely taken away from me, because I was sexually abused by the one man that was meant to be my protector. Right. And so from that point, I said to myself, well, okay, well, there's probably other men out there that understand what I'm going through. And there must also be literature that I can read about what this whole thing is. And then at the same time, as much as I was extreme in like sports and everything that I was doing, I was also listening to a lot of podcasts. And the one podcast I was listening to during that time was The School of Greatness from Lewis Howes. Have you guys ever you guys know who Lewis Howes is?
Yeah.
Yeah, The School of Greatness.
Yeah.
And it was one of his first episodes, and I remember him just openly talking about his sexual abuse, how he was sexually abused. And all of this happening at the same time. And I'm like, oh my God, this isn't a coincidence. Like, how is this happening right now? I just discovered this about myself. I'm listening to a podcast about a man that is literally talking about what happened to him and what he's been doing in order to heal from that. And so I bought his book, his first book that he wrote, which was The Masks of Masculinity. And I started just diving really deep into the subject and really going into the psychology of, not only mental health, but like everything that affects this. Because, we know for a fact, and this has been going on for years now, that 2/3 of suicides are made by men. And what is a leading cause for suicide is depression. And what is a leading cause for depression? It's loneliness, right? And so knowing this, I said to myself, man, there's got to be a lot of men that are just feeling really lonely right now, that are really, just feeling stuck and they don't see a way out. And so I said to myself as well, now that I have all this information, like where do I go? Who do I talk to? And I started just, while I was reading the information, I said to myself, the world needs to know this. And so that's when I started just sharing this stuff on Instagram, not from a place of like wanting to create a business out of it or supporting anyone. The only reason why I was doing this is because I said to myself, people need to know this. Men need to know this. And I was actually really passionate about the stuff that I was reading and just wanting to share it. And so I just started creating posts like every day. Every time I was reading something and it struck so hard. I was like, people need to know this. And so I would just filter it out and start writing I remember like I would write on my Instagram stories, and then I would just like capture, screen it, and then repost it as a post on Instagram. And that's how I started. I just really just like, white on black font, and just, I started sharing, and I started seeing the people like following me or following my Instagram really resonating to what I was talking about. And then I had people sharing me stuff about what was happening in the world, like these men's groups happening, like the Sacred Sons in the US and other people in Australia, just creating these movements where men could come together and speak and challenge each other and support each other and really get into their hearts and speak from that place. And I found that fucking amazing. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. There has to be a place like this here where I live in Canada. For sure, it's here. And I started doing some research, and I couldn't find anything. So I said to myself, well, I can't fly because we're in the middle of lockdown. So I can't go anywhere. I can't go outside of the country. And I didn't have any money back then. I had literally just lost my business as well. So I said to myself, well, I have to create something like this here. And that's what I did. I created my first men's group in Montreal, not really knowing how to do it, but really just fully trusting and doing it. And that's what I did. And I remember the first event we did, I say we there because I met other men throughout that process during these lockdowns that were very much in alignment with what I was doing, a bit like you two. And then I said, we got to create a space for men where men come together. And that's what we did. And we had, I think the first event, we had like 40 guys come in, and it was all in person. And yeah, we led the guys through different kind of initiations, because every man that was part of the organization team all had different gifts. Some guys, specialize in body and physicality, nutrition. Some of the guys really focused on yoga, breathwork, meditation. Some of the guys were really about mindset. So we just brought all of our gifts together, and we created this complete, this immersion for men to come to. And it was always like every event we did ended around the fire in the evening, like a circle around the fire, where every man could go and just share something that, speak something that needed to be shared. And that's where yeah, that's where, for me, at least for the first time, I finally saw it. I finally saw the power of bringing men together and doing this work together, and seeing men just relating to one another, men who have never met one another, and just like hearing another man's story and just starting to cry, or just starting to feel so much compassion, and like, just no ego, just pure honesty. And just men literally, even the men, some men that were afraid to speak would just say that out loud. It's like, I'm just so afraid of speaking right now. I'm afraid of being judged. I'm afraid of being criticized. And that's what needs to be shared in that moment. And that's the truth that is alive for that person in that moment. And so that's that, the rest is history. To me, it was very clear that this is what I wanted to do, and what I had to do for the rest of my life. And so from there, I just continued delving into my own journey, right? Uh, Learning from others, pushing myself to the edge, trying things out, learning from others, and yeah, and here I am, still doing this after almost 7 years now.
It's amazing. I mean, it's beautiful, and like, thank you so much for sharing. I think it's amazing how, from all your background and sort of everything that you've been through, to turn something into like true sort of love and honest and creating such positivity. I also feel like at a time where probably men needed it most, sort of around that sort of like birthing out of COVID, where even more so there needed to be more awareness around this sort of like bond that I feel men need so deeply. It was like even Conrad and I, like, we actually went on a camping trip last weekend, and it was just with a small group of friends of ours, like all guys, but
Hmm.
it was literally just a camping trip, like nothing, like a tent, a fire, and all of a sudden, like, everyone just starts opening up, and you realize, just like, wow, I didn't realize how much I needed that, and it just comes from a real place of the heart. I wanted to ask, like, when sort of those emotions were coming back and you started remembering sort of what happened in your sort of past trauma, did it ever make you feel like you wanted to like regress, or were you like, no, I'm this is how I'm going to deal with this, and turning that into something that's like positive, not only for yourself but for others? I
Yeah.
mean, that's just an amazing thing.
Yeah, absolutely. There was absolutely every part of me wanted to regress. I wanted to go back to the old way of regulating, right? Because today
Mm,
I understand a bit more of how the nervous system works. I understand how when these wounds come up, what do we want to do, or what do I want to do, is usually go to the first thing that can allow me to regulate myself or to calm myself down. And if I've used alcohol or porn or weed or cocaine or scrolling for most of my life, and that's been the way for me to regulate and bring myself back to some state of harmony, of course I'm going to think of doing that, right? Of course I'm going to think of doing that. So, during when the trauma came back out and I had no one around me, I feel like I was like, yeah, I say there was no one around me, but still there's something working with me, because sure, there are parts of me that said, I want to go back to drinking, or resenting my father, and just all these things coming back out. But then it's like remembering that, oh, wait a second, no, I actually have new tools right now. I can just breathe through this. I can reach out to people and speak to them, just to let it out. And I need to trust in that. I need to trust in that, because I've been 2 years sober. I've been 2 years clean. And it's like, one thing that came clear to me in that moment is that it wasn't a question of the reason why the trauma came back out. And I truly believe in this, is because I was finally ready to see it. I was finally ready to face it. And I was finally ready to confront it.
mm,
And it was so clear, because it's like, okay, I had to be 2 years in this journey of like understanding myself, acquiring tools, learning how to regulate myself, to finally be able to confront this. And I wasn't ready before, right? because I could only imagine, well, what would have happened if 1 month in my sobriety I would have remembered this? Well, I probably would have relapsed. I probably would have just went back to the old behavior. So
Mm.
so it's like I often work with clients, and it's like they feel that there's something there. They're just they don't know, and I tell them it's okay. You don't need to rush this. It's like we want to approach our wounds or our traumas in the most gentle way that we can, because these are already the parts of us that are wounded. They're already the parts of us that are holding on to so much pain. And so the last thing we want is to just come in and say, well, and be so strict. No, it's like we want to be gentle with it. We want to approach it with reverence, with devotion, with sacredness, because these are parts of us that are so sacred. Whether it's the inner child that's holding on to all this wound, whether it's the inner critic holding on to so much shame, we want to create space for it, right? And so it's like the best way that I can describe it is there's an essence, I believe, and I firmly believe that everyone holds a soul, and I think the soul in us, it knows all of this already, and it's like it knows when the ego is ready to face this or when it's ready to see it. And so in my situation, my soul knew in that moment that my ego is finally ready to see what needed to be seen. I was like, well, here you go. Here it
Mm.
is. Right. And so, yeah. So again, being able to face it allowed me to do what needed to be done in order to continue to move forward and coexist with this truth, instead of repressing it even more or
Mm.
shaming it even more, but really, really allowing it, accepting it, and seeing it for what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sorry, Conrad, you go.
Go for it, Rupert. Go for it.
No, honestly, no.
I just wanted to touch on because I know on your platforms you quite emphasize rising. What does it personally mean to you? Is it rising as a man, as a human, or as a person?
Mm-hmm. I see. To me, the rise really comes from the myth of the phoenix, and so it's like the phoenix rises from the ashes, right? And I remember even my first program for men was called Invictus Man, and the logo was a phoenix. And if I look at my experience, I had to sort of burn it all down in order to rise, right? I had to literally burn everything that I am not in order to fully rise. And that's somewhat of how I see the journey of a human being. It's like, if we look at our lives, we can look at our lives however we want to look at it. And that's the truth, right? And I'm not here to tell you how you should look at your experience or look at your life, not at all. But I found that there's a very empowering way to look at this whole human experience. And one of the ways that I choose to see it is through the understanding that my life is a series of initiations. And so,
What do you mean by that?
yeah. So what I mean by that is we can look at divorce as like something really bad that's happening to you. You can look at bankruptcy and see it as something that is really bad happening to you. We can look at depression and say the same thing. We can look at the loss of someone, right? And say the same, really bad, right? And the victim mindset will look at it from, why is this happening to me? But the truth is if we are stuck in victimhood and we're pointing the finger, ultimately nothing's going to come out of it, because nothing ever comes out of pointing the finger at something and someone, right? But if I can look at what was done to me, if I can look at what happened to me and not really start looking at it from a place of, oh no, why is this happening to me? But more so, why is this happening for me? Then what happens is I can look at any experience that happens in my life and I can say, wait, this isn't my fault and it is my responsibility. Because if I don't take responsibility for what has happened in my life, well, chances are I'm going to either recreate it to myself or act it out to my family, to my kids, to everyone around me. And so if I allow myself to perceive life as a series of initiations. And, Conrad, Rupert, you both are into jujitsu, right? And jujitsu is usually, any martial art is somewhat of a rites of passage, correct? And so before you get your black belt or any other belt, do you have to go through some kind of initiation?
Well,
There are
series of
initiations,
actual-
yeah, like kind of like a series of
Yeah, right. A series of
Okay.
initiations. Almost every belt is an initiation, is it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, pretty much. Like, yeah,
And ultimately, before getting the belt, right, you're sort of an apprentice, you're learning, and then you're getting to that stage where you're finally ready for the belt, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could say that. Yeah.
Yeah, we could say that. And then what happens once we have the belt? What happens once we have the belt?
Well, in our particular gym, we actually go through an initiation where you have to walk down a line and then you get whacked by the other belts.
Right. You get whacked by the other
Which
belt.
is technically like an initiation.
But
What's
what
that,
does the
sorry?
belt what does the belt symbolize?
Growth.
Just growth. Yeah. Pushing
Growth.
through.
Yeah. Growth, humility. What else?
Accountability, discipline, showing up.
Yeah. So how is that any different?
Yeah, all that.
And so my question to you is how is that any different from life? Right?
Yeah, I would say it's not. Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
So everything that happens in my life is an initiation. In the last 7, 8, in the last 10 years, my father killed himself. I lost my business twice. I went to rehab. I lost a lot of relationships, right? What else? Probably so much more. I can't even remember it. But yet I'm still here. I'm still here because I've decided to look at all these experiences as learning opportunities, right? And that's what an initiation is. On the other side of the initiation is a greater version of me waiting. It's a humbler version of me. It's a more caring version of me. It's a more loving version of me. And so if I can look at any challenge that comes into my life as an initiation instead of a curse or instead of something bad happening to me, then what happens is that I can approach this challenge with an open mind and with an open heart. And instead of remaining constricted and stuck inside, I can actually look at it and say, wow, this thing is actually happening so that it can help me, so that it can support me become better. So if I look at, if I look at my experience of sexual abuse, for example, when it finally came out, right? By facing it, what I have found is really the most deepest essence in me, right? All of the parts of me that I had basically hidden away, and namely the parts of me that were taken away, such as my masculinity. And so by facing this experience, well, ultimately it put me in a position with myself where not only have I become more grounded, more at peace, more at harmony, not only have I forgiven what was done to me, I now help others in that path as well.
Mm.
But if I wouldn't have learned from the
I wanted to
experience,
ask,
right? If I wouldn't have learned from the experience, what would have happened? I would have probably remained stuck. I would probably just go back to the drinking. And so that's why allowing myself to see everything as an initiation becomes a really empowering way to move through life and to move through these challenges and to move through experiences. Does that make sense?
It totally does.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I wanted to ask, because you mentioned and you touched very briefly on like your soul showing you these experiences that your ego is ready to sort of see. Do you potentially feel that your soul kind of almost brings these experiences to you in order for you to kind of have these experiences that then in turn add to your experience to give love to others? So your soul kind of chooses this in a way?
I believe so, yes. Actually. Yeah, I do believe
Yeah.
that these experiences, not that they're predefined, perhaps they are. I don't have the answer to that. But I do know that it's like the soul, again, the soul, the ego, all these things are not things that are somewhat apart from me. They're me in my entirety. And it's like the way that I see the soul is that I see the soul as my connection to the divine. I see it as my connection to something greater than myself. I see it as my connection to everything and everyone around me. And ultimately, I see it as my innate wisdom. I see it as well as this is the capacity from which I can heal. You know, in IFS, in internal family systems, we call it self energy. And when we're doing parts work or when we're going into internal family systems, the goal is to get into this self energy into the soul, so that we can heal the parts of us that are hurt or wounded. And so, you know, when I fully express that, like, and then the ego, for me, the ego is the sense of self, which is ultimately a false sense of self. But I need the ego in this experience because it's what allows me to understand all of this. And the thing about the ego is that is the very thing that is being initiated. And so the more that I initiate my ego, the more that I mature my ego, in other words. You know, and some of the pillars in men's mythopoetic movements wrote a book called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And this was written by Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette. And they speak of the whole process of what I'm sharing about initiation. And what happens through initiation is that the ego, the sense of self, matures, right? And the soul is really our truest form, if that makes any sense. And that's where all of the wisdom exists, and that's where all of the knowing exists. And it's like the ego is sort of like this immature part that needs to mature throughout our experience. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Hey guys, your feedback is very important. And no, this is not an advertisement. Actually, what I'm asking from you is to leave a comment below what you liked and, most importantly, what you disliked about this episode, because we can improve on the next episodes and we can make a better content for you to listen. Give us also a topics you'd like to us talking about, and we can prepare, do your research and talk about it on the next episodes. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask as well, do you view soul as God?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because when you said about initiations, one thing that really crossed my mind is that for everything that you seek or dream, God will put certain challenges in front of your way, so he can test you, like God, universe, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
But it will test you to see how much you can take, and then based on the evidence, it will provide you what you deserve.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And you know, I'll bring it even further. It's like, you know, we often pray for God to remove us from the storm, but it is God that sent us the storm.
Exactly.
Right. And in speaking of challenges here, what these challenges are. And it's like there's no part of me that doesn't believe that when I'm being challenged or when I am in the storm, I don't have the capacity to face it. Because or else it wouldn't be happening. Right? Or else it wouldn't be happening. And this isn't to bypass, again, you know, I don't want to go too crazy as to speaking there. You know, there's real pain out there. There's a lot of suffering in the collective. There are wars happening. There's a lot of people, you know, dying every single day. And I know that when I start speaking of this, a lot of people want to challenge, well, the person, the child that is dying, what about that? It's like, yeah, in the end of the day, that is exactly what they have to experience, you know, in this lifetime. And whether it's a sad thing to say or not, or a heartless thing to say, I don't think so, right? Because at the end of the day, the only thing I can really focus on is my journey, and also being better so that these things don't happen in the world, right? Because if I look at what's happening in the collective, it's truly a mass psychosis. And that's why this work for men is so crucial and so important, is because we're all contributing to it in one way or another. And one thing that I've also that I know is that, you know, the external world, right? The outer world is a reflection of the inner world. And we live in a world and we live in a time where all of our attention is being pulled outwards, whether it's through media, social media, through you name it, right? The news. It's always like that. It's everything is like, look at here, look at what's happening in front of you, choose this side or choose that side, right? Red or blue. It's always like division, 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 division. Always everything that is being fed is based on fear, based on shame. You know, men being told for decades that you can't cry, vulnerability isn't for men. You know, you name it, man up. You know, I'll give you something to cry about. All of these spells that have been put onto us in the collective is what's creating this mass psychosis. And now more than ever, there's more and more men just looking at this division, comparing themselves to other men who are on social media. And like all of this is just pulling people outwards and never inwards. Because in truth, if we would all do the work, if we would all look inside of ourselves, then the world would be in a much different place. In a much different place. You know, what I'm seeing more than anything in all of these wars and everything that's happening out there, it's just little men. I say little men here, but this is all little men with unresolved wounds that have a really wounded boy inside of them that are controlling the world. And that's why more than ever right now, men need to awaken to what's sacred and what's true inside of them. Not from an egotistical place, but knowing that if I can bring safety to myself, if I can bring more love to myself, if I can bring more understanding to myself, or like Socrates said, you know, to know thyself, then ultimately I'm giving that to the rest of the world as well. And so the more safety I bring to myself, the more safety I bring into the world. The more love I bring into myself, the more love I bring to others. The more service that I can be to myself, well, the more service I can be to others.
You touched briefly on little men. Could you define a little man or a soft man?
Yeah, well, there's so the little man exists in all of us. we're all a part of it. We all have this essence in us. And what's so important to understand and to remember is that, you know, you guys spoke a lot of positivity, being positive, right? I can't even say it right now.
Positivity.
Positivity. Yeah, you guys speak a lot of positivity. Well, can positivity exist without negativity?
Probably not.
Probably not, right?
Pendulum, right?
Because or else, why would we need to be positive if there's no negative, right? And so, can light exist without shadow?
No.
No, and shadow cannot exist without light, right? Could courage exist without fear?
No.
Couldn't.
No, right? Because why do I need to be courageous if there's no fear? And so we live in this world of duality. We live in this world, and I'm saying duality here, although duality is an illusion. But we live in this world where things there's a lot of opposites: feminine, masculine, light, shadow, all of these things, right? And it's understanding how to exist in that paradox of shadow and light. And so when I look at men that are destroying the world, I need to understand where that exists inside of me, right? Because it does. And true integration or true journey towards wholeness is being able to integrate the shadow. It's being able to integrate the parts of me that I have so much aversion towards. And so when I speak of little men, what I tend to speak of is I speak of the immature masculine. I speak of this frequency of men who choose to not, to just remain, I'd say, asleep, who don't want to look anywhere else, who are too fearful of looking inwards. And it's not to say that us men that are doing the work are better. No, absolutely not. Right? Actually, everyone has qualities, and everyone has qualities, and everyone has more of a shadow to work on. But I guess where I'm really bringing this at is men who still act like they are 5-year-old boys. Right? And that's really what I mean more than anything. And it's not that there's something wrong with it. There's absolutely not. There's nothing wrong with it. It's actually part of the experience, because at the end of the day, we all have a little boy in us that is either running the show or not, right? And I know that a big piece of this work is being able to go back there and creating that relationship with that little boy that's running the show, because it's a little boy that has either felt unseen and unappreciated and unaccepted and has felt shame, that in most cases will drive men to do really crazy stuff. John Bradshaw was sort of like the forefather of inner child work, and he spoke a lot about the number one cause of suffering in the world is a wounded inner child. And so that's I guess that's what I think where we have to look at more than anything, is looking, again, coming back to what I shared earlier, is looking at what was done to me, so that I can not say, oh no, why did this happen to me, but what is my responsibility here? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask, in your view, what defines healthy masculinity in today's society?
I think, I think healthy masculinity is more so. So here's what I'm going to say about masculinity is, I don't think, or here's what I'm going to say about what it means to be a man. I don't think we can define what a man is, because the second we truly define what a man is, we impose a limit onto him, right? That's the one piece on man that I want to share. And on masculinity itself, to me, healthy masculinity is more so of not an individual experience, but a collective experience, where men come together in order to see, in order to feel, in order to support, in order to challenge, in order to be there for one another, in order to remember the qualities of why we are here as men, right? And we often talk about being the protectors. We often talk about being the providers. We often talk about having purpose. We often talk about being centered and grounded and all these beautiful things. And if you cannot see another man with those qualities, how can you ever know what they are within you, right? And so, to me, healthy masculinity is so much, because once you take a room of men who are doing the work together, that is the true revolution, right? That is a true revolution, because there's this deep remembrance of who we actually are, of why we came into this world, of what we're actually here to protect, and who we're actually here to protect from. And I can talk about all of these beautiful qualities again, like integrity, like being regulated, and all these beautiful things. But I think that it's really about men coming together to remember this and to support each other into achieving this.
Why do you think there is such a huge stigma around men opening up?
Well, I think it's always been like that, at least for the last century. It's always been like that, especially since the industrial age. Men were told to leave the house. They were told to provide for their families, that they had to work from morning to end of night, and so men were basically turned into machines. And you can add wars to that. You can add all of these societal sort of constructs and things that happen, where men, especially during wars, I mean, you can't really be emotional, right? You can't really, it's you have one job to do, and it's to kill the enemy. So again, taking that collective psychosis and taking men into war, bringing men out of war back into society, and not really giving them a resource besides, well, you have to work now and you have to make money. That in itself is just so much repression. And if I really want to go into why, this might sound really far off, but I think that there are forces that don't want to see men in their power. And again, I think that's much of the immature masculine that I was talking about. That why? Because the immature masculine is really rooted in control. It's rooted in fear. right? It's rooted in having control. It's rooted in I'm the king of the mountain kind of experience, right? Tyranny and separation. So if we have men that are fully accessing their truth and their power, then there's no room for that control. There's no room for that fear. So the stigma or the things that are being said to men is exactly that, to keep them repressed. And then we look at the last decade and we look at, all these things that are happening in the world, men continuously being shamed for being men, right? This distortion now around genderism, like all of these political agendas being pushed, right? Even this whole thing that happened in the US, the No King movement, which I understand what it's rooted in, but what are we actually saying into the world when we're saying no kings, right? We're actually telling men that there can be no king within you either. And what's important about the king, it's that every man has a king inside of them, but it's not the king that we think of. It's not this monarch that controls the world. It's actually our center. If we think of the king, right, especially Carl Jung expressed that to us, that the king is the center of the psyche. And we need to access this part of us because it's what actually nurtures, blesses, and takes care of the inner kingdom. So when we're actually telling people to chant no king, especially men, we're telling them to not be in their center anymore. And then what happens is that men no longer trust themselves either. And they've again just continue looking outwardly. And what are we actually saying to this one man that we are saying no king? We're actually saying that he is a king. We're actually acknowledging the fact that he is a king. If we take the time to go and chant no king in the street. And I understand that this is against tyranny, but why aren't we saying no tyrants? Why isn't it that we're saying no tyrants? And so there's so many things that will keep men suppressed and repressed. Again, 2/3 of suicide are made by men. What is the leading cause for suicide? I've said it before, it's depression. And what is the leading cause for depression? It's loneliness. This system is created in the way it's built to divide men, to keep them in their fears, to keep them in their shame, to keep them small, to keep them hidden. Because what would happen if men would truly be in their power? Well, we'd be in a very much different way of experiencing life. There wouldn't be a place for control. There wouldn't be a place for domination, right? If we would actually come together to create a new world, then man, our kids would live a much more different experience. Our wives would feel safe. But then that goes against the very system that is currently built. And so if we truly want to destroy the very system that keeps us men small and divided, then it's not by marching in the streets that we'll ever do that change. It's actually by going inwards. It's actually by healing our wounds. It's actually by bringing more safety to ourselves. It's actually about being kind, being loving, being nurturing to the people around us. But in order for us to see that, we have to look within us, because it's only by going inside that we can start seeing the illusions that are around us. And so this goes really fucking deep, is what I'm going to say. And really it's, well, how deep do you want to go? Because the deeper you go, the more you understand what's happening in front of you.
How do you go inwards?
I completely agree. I was just about to ask for someone. Yeah. No, I was just about to ask the same thing. Like,
Go, Rick.
how does one go? How does one go inwards?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, can I guide you guys into a little exercise?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask both of you to just close your eyes. And right now, Conrad and Rupert, I'm just going to ask you to notice what's present for you. And what I mean by that is just really going into the body. Not just the mind space, but really going into the body. And I invite you to just notice what's alive there. Notice if there's any tension. Notice if there's just space, or maybe if you feel pressure, or whatever it is that you sense. Notice it and just be present with it. And I want to remind both of you that every time that you go inside, you will have an experience. And as you notice, ask yourself, how am I breathing right now? Is my breath shallow? Is my breath deep? And if it can help, I can invite you just to take a deeper inhale from the nose, holding the breath at the top, and now just exhaling from the mouth, slowly. Let's do that 4 more times. Inhale from the nose. Hold at the top. And exhale. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go one after the other. I'm going to do what we call incomplete sentences. What that means is that I'm going to start a sentence, and then whoever I'm doing it with, you will complete that sentence. So for example, I could say, right now the weather is, and then Conrad, you would maybe answer, the weather is hot, or the weather, the weather's nice, whatever comes up. And I'll begin with Conrad and do a few of those sentences, and then I'll go to Rupert. And Rupert, while you listen to Conrad, or while you listen to my complete sentences, I'm going to invite you to also complete those sentences, but really inside of yourself. And Conrad, you're going to answer them out loud. And so let's begin. Again, I'll begin with Conrad. So Conrad, I'm just going to invite you just to breathe in a bit deeper. And breathe out. And let's begin. Right now, what I'm feeling in my body is
nervousness.
And where I feel that exactly is
Top of my body.
Yeah. And if my nervousness could speak, it would say,
I'm nervous.
Yeah. The moments I felt most nervous as a child was when I
heard my parents having an argument.
Yeah. Take a deeper breath. Yeah. Yeah. When my parents would fight, that would make me
feel scared.
And what I wanted to do was
don't fight.
Yeah. What I wish my parents would do instead was
hug.
Right now, saying that makes me feel
happier.
Yeah. Yeah. And the main reason why my parents would fight was because
stupid misunderstandings.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish they could just
understand each other.
Because if they understand each other, then I would
Be happier.
Mm. Where I want to be happier in my life today is
Just do what I like.
and what I like the most is
Grow as a person.
mhm. Because if I grow, then
I live.
mhm, yeah. And living is so important for me because
We got one life.
mm, yeah, yeah. If I don't live, then I'm afraid that I will.
Regret.
Uh-huh. And what I regret the most in my life is
Missed opportunities.
mm, yeah. Take a deep breath again. And I just want you to imagine that that little boy that's feeling all the nervousness from his parents fighting, just want you to imagine that you're there in front of him and you're with him. What I want to say to him is,
I'm here.
hmm, yeah. And what he wants to say to me is,
Who are you?
mm, yeah, yeah, yeah. He doesn't recognize you. That's okay. Yeah. But just imagine that you're there with him for now and or you just be there with him and stay there and breathe with him. I'm going to go to Rupert in that meantime. All right, Rupert, take a deep breath in. What I'm feeling after hearing Conrad is
Anxious,
and where I feel that in my body.
but
Let's say that
excited.
again.
Anxious but excited.
Uh-huh. And where I feel that in my body is
In my chest.
mhm. And if my chest could speak, it would say,
Open up.
open up. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. I want it to open up because
I can be myself.
mm, where I don't feel like I'm myself is
When I'm not able to let myself be the person I want to be.
mhm, mhm. When I was a child, I couldn't be the person I wanted to be because
I had to be there for my siblings more.
Yeah. It's like you were given responsibilities very early on, no? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. When I look at that little boy, what I see is
A boy that's scared. A boy that kind of feels alone.
yeah. And Rupert, we're in a very important space right now where, little Rupert was probably feeling very, very alone, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. And so maybe you answered it earlier, but I think I got disconnected. How, yeah, if you could show up for him right now, what would it look like?
I would give him a hug and tell him that I've got him.
Yeah. 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 And just imagine you're doing that and just breathe into the space. Conrad, you as well. Just go, feel that sigh of just having that little boy being close to you guys, just close to you. Like he's feeling safe, right? And you're just offering that safety for him. Just, even if you want to say internally, hey, I got you. I'm here with you. We're safe. Everything's okay. Can you guys feel a bit of that? Just a bit calmer? Do you feel a sudden shift? Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. So I just want you both right now just to inwardly acknowledge the little boy that showed up for you, that expressed something really, really important. The nervousness, the anxiety. And you were able to bring safety in that moment. So just acknowledge him for showing up. Just say thank you, even if it's like a little high five, whatever it is, a little hug. Now what I'm going to ask you guys to do is we're going to seal the space. Take a few deep breaths in, inhale, and exhale. Inhale and exhale. Last one, inhale and exhale. You can go back into space whenever you want. Yeah. Yeah. Conrad,
That
how
felt
do
great.
you feel right now? It's more relaxed.
Yeah, I feel like that sigh was like a natural one. I had to let it go, let it out. It's very interesting, IFS. My girlfriend did a bit of, well, no, not a bit, but she did a lot of IFS therapy. And she told me just the principles and how it works. And I tried a few times and I definitely felt a shift. And even after this time as well, it felt even a bit emotional because
Yeah.
it feels like this boy is trapped in this lonely space there and
Hmm.
he's got no one. But then once I'm there, I feel like an older brother for him, to him, I should say. Um, and it's crazy how instantly you can feel so much better just by helping him to cope with that one moment.
Yeah. 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 What about you, Rupert? How did you feel? What was there for you?
Yeah, I kind of just felt like my chest just opened up, and um, it's funny. It's like I get this kind of real sense that like a room opens for me, and this little boy comes up to me and is always really ready to see me.
Yeah.
Um, Going into that space, and it turns into something that's like you kind of get a warm feeling when sort of when we were going through that embrace and having that moment where it's like I've got you, and it's that reassurance of sort of safe space.
Hmm.
Because I think that for me, I always have that tendency that I feel um, like I haven't got it, so it's like a reassurance to me. And I
Yeah.
think that maybe sometimes when I'm faced with obstacles, my little boy tends to come out there.
Mm.
So yeah, really powerful, and yeah, thank you for guiding me through that. I know that the I was still very much in that zone, so
Good.
yeah, that was beautiful.
I want to mention as well that when Malcolm was guiding Rupert through his journey, journey is that how
Yeah.
I should say? Um, and when Rupert said, "I have to look after my siblings," um, I felt a lot of empathy.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, you felt. I just wanted to kind of
Mm.
give you a hug, Rupert. No,
Yeah,
really,
thanks,
like
man.
it's.
No, I
I felt
appreciate it.
really
Yeah.
emotional.
Yeah, I felt that too. I felt like, it's like it was so special where it felt like Conrad was there with his with his inner child and just like witnessing Rupert and his
Mm,
experience and just like it felt like he wanted to reach out in that
yeah,
moment. I could feel
yeah,
it. Yeah. This is beautiful. This is really beautiful. And guys, we did like 5 minutes of that. And of course, when I'm working with a man, we go into deeper processes. We go for 30, 45 minutes to see what's there. And ultimately
mm,
the goal is really like at the foundation, it's not just you guys asked how do you go inside. That's one of the ways, right? But if we can become intimate with our emotions, understanding what emotions actually are and the information that it's there to offer us, if we can understand like the signals we get into the sensations, right, the tightness, the pressure, like all of these things are signals that our body's telling us. And so the mind is a very powerful tool. It's very necessary. But what we know for a fact is that 80% of the information comes from the body, 20 from the mind. And so whenever there's an experience, something happens, especially if I work with a client that has like recurring patterns of reactivity or anger. My first piece is not to go, well, tell me more about what you think this is. My first piece is going, well, let's go into the body. How does anger actually show up for you? What is a sensation? What is the texture? What is the color? Like what is the sensation? And then from there we can start understanding where the anger, not only how the anger shows up, but where it actually comes from. Because then if we can actually say, well, when was the first time that you started feeling this way, and they can attribute it to an experience, then I can bring them into that experience and really, really see, okay, is there something unresolved there that is actually keeping you stuck in that anger? I'll give you for an example. If I have a mom that's just very critical or very shameful, always shaming me as I grow up, or being very emotionally dominant, right? Like when she's emotional, she just projects everything on her child. This is classic in a story of a father that leaves, and now you have the lone boy with his mom, and his mom is always just projecting her wounds onto the child, sort of becoming the emotional punching bag. then he's going to go in most cases, he's going to be in a relationship with a woman. He's going to attract a woman that is going to be very perhaps emotional or very, very, not just very emotional, but like, I'd say very expressive. And what that will trigger in him is that same experience as when he was a boy, which was like if he would shut down as a child when he saw his mom being like that, he's going to do the same. He's going to do the same 30 years later with his wife. He's going to just shut down whenever she gets emotional. So what that does is that, let's say a woman is trying to just express how she's feeling. She's just trying to express, hey, I'm really feeling sad because you said you were going to do this and you didn't do it. And the boy in that moment, the story he's telling himself is that he's shameful. He's not good enough. Right. And what he's feeling in his body is his mom shaming him. And he's going to react the same way. And so it's in those moments that we can understand, okay, well, listen, what's happening? Your wife isn't your mom. She's just trying to express how sad she feels. But you're making that experience the same as when your mom would shame you or criticize you. So let's go there. Let's go and see what happened in that moment to your nervous system. What are the emotional imprints that are there? And let's see if we can rewrite the story. Let's see if there's something to be felt there. And often these men will go into this experience and they're going to cry, they're going to release anger, whatever it is. And that's where the shift happens, because then that there's healing whenever the wife, again, will express an emotion. And now he doesn't shut down anymore. Instead, he's in the experience, he's breathing, he's there with her. And he's like, hey, babe, I see you. I'm here. I understand. You're right. I lacked integrity. And you know what? This is how I'm going to do better. That's when the healing happens, because now the same experience that would trigger him no longer triggers him, but instead invites him to do something better and greater.
What tools would you give for a man to guide himself and heal those wounds?
Well, number one, it's like the healing journey is not linear. There's not only one way to do it. I've experienced so much. I went through, plant medicine. I've hired mentors. I worked with therapists. I went into therapy. I've learned, what I practice with you guys, I learned from a mentor of mine, which is a pillar in psychotherapy. He's retired right now. He's in his close to his 80s. But really, the best thing to do is to not do it alone. So whether it's you find a men's group where they focus on the nervous system, they focus on getting into the body, all while doing hardcore shit like fucking, training, jiu-jitsu, like all these things can coexist together, right? Because we need that as men. We need that primal energy. We need that wild man to be activated in us, right? We need to be pushed at the edge. We need to do these hard things and also get into our bodies. Learn to express our emotions, right? Learn to feel. Like sometimes for some men, the most extreme shit you can do is actually feel your emotions, right? So we want that full spectrum of being a man, and so what is the best thing to do is to not do it alone. Find a group that really is holistic, that wants to bring everything for you. Find a person that you can work with, either a coach or a therapist, a program, whatever it is that gives you the information you need to go there. And also start reading books. Because there's so much literature out there that will support you on your journey. I know for me, it's always been like that. And so read about healing, read about the shadow, read about the nervous system, read about all these things that are going to bring you back to this deep remembering of who you are. Yeah.
That was awesome.
Oh, that was so great.
Yeah, it's actually the first time that I guide two people through that process. This is a test for me. I wanted to see. I've done it before in a group setting but people say it at the same time. But I wanted to see what would happen if I would start with one, then go to Rupert and just see if there's going to be some emotional connection or empathy or compassion. And it did happen, right?
Yeah.
It didn't happen, yeah.
Yeah.
Malcolm,
Sorry.
I wanted to also ask you. So let's just say a man goes into retreats, seeks therapy, seeks mentorship, and it seems that on the surface level he's doing it quite well. But on the inside, he's struggling to allow the love to come to him.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to that man, and how would the man can allow the love to come?
Well, listen, if someone firstly is looking for support, it's because they're ready. They're there, right? A part of them is definitely ready to let down the armor. A part of them is definitely ready to just crack open. And so it's trusting themselves. Really, what I'm gonna say is this: if it's two things. When you are seeking support, make sure that the people who support you are people who just mirror back to you your power, right? It's people who will tell you, hey, you got all the answers inside of you, and I'm just here to support you and guide you. It's people who will believe in you, without condition, even if you fail over and over again, and they just believe in you. They're like, hey, you got this, right? Are people who are also doing the work. We're also deep in their own process, not just talking about it, but really embodying it. That's the first piece. The second piece, again, if you're ready to do the work, it means a part of you is willing to let down the armor. And maybe receiving love is going to be difficult for you in the beginning, but here's the paradox, is that if you choose to find support, that is actually one of the greatest acts of self-love. And so even if it doesn't appear it like that, you're actually giving yourself love by deciding to do this work, by deciding to invest time, attention, resources, energy into something that's going to make you better, that, investing in something that's going to make you greater. And so that already there is the first act of self-love. And maybe you won't see it in the beginning. I didn't see it in the beginning when I went into rehab. I didn't know that what I was doing was actually a first act of self-love. It took me 9 months till I actually let love in. I had a woman, I went to get my 9-month chip of AA, and I remember just feeling so much shame in that moment, feeling like I wasn't good enough. Here I am 9 months sober after almost 30 years of pure trauma. And then I'm just walking down the lane and people are just cheering at me and clapping. And I'm just looking down, just filled with shame. I didn't know why I was filled with shame, but it was there. And this woman just grabbed my shoulder. She took me aside and she said, Malcolm, let the love in. You deserve this love, and you are so worthy of this love. I just started crying, and it felt like for the first time, the love was actually coming in. But of course, with hindsight, I'd see that, the very act of helping, the very act of saying, hey, I need support, is the first step of allowing love in.
It's beautiful.
This is so beautiful, man. I felt a bit emotional.
That's good. Yeah.
This is amazing, man.
Yeah. This is what it gets to be, gentlemen, and I Conrad Rupert, I'm so excited to see what comes next for both of you. This little camping trip, what does it look like after to bring men into, a whole immersion, different experiences, body, mind, soul, heart, it'd be great to see that, because the truth is this is more needed than ever. I remember I was saying that 5 years ago, it's more needed than ever. But then I look at the state of the world today, and that is more needed than ever, where we need to create spaces for men like this, where even if it's like a camping trip, we go out in the woods around the fire, do a bit of movement every day, do a bit of stretching together, do a bit of, hey, let's do some prompts in the journal together, whatever it is, let's fast for 3 days and see what comes up.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say, Conrad, you said this interesting thing, and it kind of stayed in my mind. It was I suppose in a world where there's not much, or authenticity seems to be harder to come by, and it's harder to sort of find values, especially sort of as a man. It's where do you go back to sort of find and seek those values that you truly want to come through? I think that having that self-awareness is so needed. And just my question would be, sort of, for a man that sort of is wanting to do that work and is on that journey, where does a man sort of first start sort of finding those values in order to carry through?
The values in itself, the way I see values, or our core values, they're sort of our anchors. I truly believe that a man without value is a man that is sort of lost at sea. And when I speak of a man without value, it's a man that doesn't hold any core values, right? And we speak of integrity, discipline, love, compassion, all these things is what we get to be curious about. And it's like, really, when I do this with my clients, for example, say, hey, what's important for you? What are your values? And we start naming them. They look at it and they're like, yeah, but I'm speaking of integrity. I'm not in it. Like, I'm really not in my integrity. And it's like, that's okay. At least you have something to work towards. If integrity becomes one of your core values, then every day or every week you get to check in and say, all right, well, when was I in my integrity this week? And when was I not in my integrity this week? And how can I do this better? Or how can I change this? Or what is it that I need to do in order to make, to just do better here? Because then, and also, again, I'm just I cannot stress this enough. It's like, how can you know if you're fully in your integrity if you're not surrounded by people who are in their integrity or not, right? What is actually our sort of baseline here? That's why, again, the future is community. The future is being with your tribe. The future is being with other men that can literally, you can come into space and like, yeah, I'm fully in my integrity. But then like you've got 5 other men who are like looking at you and say, hey, bro, like I hear you that you say that you're in your integrity, but really in the last 3 weeks, you've continuously said to us that you were going to take care of this and do that. And it hasn't been done. That guy can either look at himself and say, well, no, what are you talking about? What are you saying? And resist to that. But when you've got 5 guys telling you that this is what's happening, that's why you need to be in that space. So you're like, holy shit, wait, you guys are all right. You're like, okay, I didn't see this about myself. Right. And it requires not only will, it requires really just a deep desire to look at yourself and humility too. Still to this day, like I'm 7 years into this work and I'm still being reproached or like still being given feedback by the people closest to me. And sometimes I resist it. I'm like, what are you talking about? No, what are you saying? That doesn't, it's not me. What are you saying? But then I take a seat back and I'm like, wait a second. This has been told to me by like 2-3 different people. There's something there for me. All right. And so I get to look at it. So I don't know if that answered the question on value specifically or where to start. But again, I think the best place to start is defining a group of men. And you find that today, and whether it's the MMA clubs or jiu-jitsu clubs, and that's a great place to start, And it's like, what does it look like? You guys are rolling together, but then it's like, hey bros, like this is how we live on the mat. Let's go talk about how we live outside the mat,
Yeah. It's so interesting. It's like, even with because I've only ever been in the jiu-jitsu space not very long, but like you're on the mats and then someone will be like, so how's your day going? And then all of a sudden it starts opening up. I do think like physical touch as well has like an aspect to it where there seems to be this sort of like opening with men as well. Things start to become a lot easier to talk to even after a roll, and you're like, oh, that was really good, man, and how have you been doing? There seems to be this sort of like so like for me, I instantly found that group and I was like, yeah, that's a way for me to get in.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And yes, the physical touch piece is so beautiful as well. It's like something that I say is, you can't fully hold your woman if you don't let another man hold you. Wow. And some people could think of that and say, no, bro, what are you talking about? That's gay. What are you saying? Another man hold me. But yeah, it's in those spaces when you break down and you let another man just be there with you and hold you, that you actually know what it feels to be held. And then you actually know how to give that back to someone, And so that's what we find in these spaces again for men. It's like, all right, let's be all of ourselves. You spoke of authenticity earlier. That's a place where you get to practice that. And it's crazy to think that we have to practice authenticity. It's crazy that we're in a world where we have to practice being ourselves. But that's the truth. That's the reality. Because for years, we're just been being told that something is wrong with us, that we have to put on masks, that we have to adjust ourselves to other people's needs, that I, as a child, have to take care of all my siblings. I'm a child, right? And what does that do? Masks upon masks, performance, having to be like this, having to impress, having to do this, having to do that, which will bring you to some places. But yeah, absolutely. Maybe it's going to bring you to your first million. Maybe it's going to bring you to a successful business. Maybe it's going to bring you to a wife and kids. But then when the masks can no longer hold, then what? Then what? I have a lot of men, 50s, 60s, coming to me and saying, I don't know who I am. I look at my wife, I love my kids, but then I look at everything that I've built. I don't know who I am anymore. Right? Why? Because we lived a life far from authenticity. Because we've been constantly told that this is not who we have to be. We have to be like this and we have to be like that. We have to have titles. We have to have the degrees. We have to have the amount of money. We have to have the house. Why? According to who? Like who? Oh, well, to be a good citizen, and this is how it works. And I was like, what? But I just want to be in nature. I want to fucking be butt naked. I want to tan my asshole. And I want to be just with my feet in the grass. I want to hug fucking trees. Can I do that? No, you can't. It's not accepted in society. Okay. So what can I do? Well, you have to go into the system and this is what you have to do. And if you're sick, take this pill. And also it's like, it's all a big illusion. It's all a big show. Oh, and don't forget to choose red or blue. It's like, it's all the fucking things that, again, coming back full circle to what we were saying earlier, brings us further away from our truest essence. Today I heard Rupert and Conrad speak real truth. And what you guys said is, I'm feeling nervous. I'm feeling anxious. I can't debate that. I can't say that's not true. Think about it, right? If Conrad comes here and he chokes the fuck out of me, and then I wake up and I'm like, oh man, I'm not feeling well. Conrad can't say, no, you're not feeling well. No, you can't debate that. We can't debate emotions. We can't debate physical experiences. And this is what the world needs more of, is being able to share from that place. And if we can create safe spaces where men can come in and say, yo, I feel fucking tired. I'm fed up. I feel stressed. I feel afraid. And they're being met with no shame. They're being met with no criticism. They're being met just with pure love. Then they can start doing that for themselves. And until we come to a place where we can look at our emotions and say, you know what? I'm feeling afraid. I'm feeling shame. And I just, until we come to a place where we cannot meet fully our emotions, and nothing's going to change. It's the day where I can see my shame. I can see my pain. I can allow myself to feel it and say, fuck, that's just what it is. It's just an emotion. It's nothing else but just an emotion. And this is where we get to be, or where we want to go, because that's true authenticity. Yeah.
I wanted to also ask you, because I know there's a big thing with divorces and breakups in our society, and how can people, maybe men especially, not only save their marriages, relationships, but also thrive in them?
Yeah. Well, it's so crazy because it's always going to come back to the same, right? What I mean by that is, all right, if we come back to what I shared with you guys earlier about the external world being a reflection of the inner world, right? You guys remember when I said that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we look at it that way, if we look at what's in front of us reflects what's inside of us. Now let's look at our relationship, right? Let's look at the conflict that's happening in our relationship. That's ultimately a reflection of what's happening inside of us. And so if I'm always divided and disconnected from my partner, if I'm always in conflict with my partner, what does that say about me?
You're in conflict
Something
with
wrong is
yourself.
with me.
Yeah, I'm in constant conflict with myself. I'm constantly divided in myself, right? And so I believe that relationships is actually some of the most important work there is. So no wonder that there's so much disruption there. No wonder that there's like an epidemic of divorce and lack of relationships. And let's look at the things that are actually causing all of that. Again, it's everything that's being pushed. It's like, this is what an ideal relationship looks like. And then also all the things that go into way, like that prevent us from being intimate in our partnerships. A lack of emotional intelligence, for example, right? If men are continuously being told that something's wrong with their emotions, how will they ever connect emotionally with their partners? how will they ever be emotionally present with their partners? You know, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It can't. It's not there. And this is what we always see in relationships. A woman that is yearning and longing to just understand their partner and want to be understood, but their man is just always in the head, always trying to fix, always trying to do all these things, right? It's a classic myth as to why it's not happening, because we don't understand each other. And the reason we don't understand each other is because we're always sharing from the mind. You know, let's come back to what I just said previously. If I'm at the restaurant with Rupert, if I'm at the restaurant with you, Rupert, and I say, Rupert, and you're on your phone, I say, Rupert, you don't care about me. You're always on your phone. You don't want to be here. Right? What are you going to do? You might say, no, what are you talking about? Of course I want to be here. I'm just sending a message to Conrad. I'm just sending a message to Conrad right now about the podcast. It's like, no, well, there you go again. You don't care about me. You don't. Of course I care about you. And then what happens is the debate starts picking up, and now it never ends, right? Until someone flips the table or someone leaves, whatever it is. Why does that happen? Why does that happen? It's because we're speaking two different languages. We're projecting our stories onto each other instead of actually expressing something else, which is, you know, imagine, Rupert, instead of saying that to you, I would look at you and say, Rupert, I'm feeling really lonely right now. What would happen?
Well, I would feel like I wasn't very good company at all.
Or you might just drop everything, right?
Yeah.
You might just drop everything and then understand that, wait a second, this person in front of me is expressing how they feel lonely. So maybe I'm going to drop my phone and create connection with this person.
Yeah.
Now, what happened? What's the difference? Do you guys know what the difference was?
You're not shifting the blame onto someone else. I guess.
Exactly. Yes. I'm not shifting the blame, and I'm not sharing a perception. I'm actually sharing an emotion. Perceptions can be debated. Emotions cannot be debated. It can't. Because you can't look at me and say, no, you don't feel lonely. Right? You can't debate that. So when couples, again, start sharing from the heart and start sharing from the emotional space, then we can create connection. My teacher says, one of my mentors actually says, the greatest aphrodisiac is connection. And the only way to ever create long-lasting connection is through our emotions. It's not from the mind. It's really from our emotions. You know, earlier when Conrad said he felt nervous, I'm pretty sure, Rupert, you felt that.
Yeah.
And when Rupert talked about his inner child feeling lonely, I'm pretty sure Conrad felt that. You did. You wanted to reach out and give him a hug. Right? You're both sharing what you were feeling, actual emotions, and not stories. It's like, no, my inner child's feeling lonely. My inner child is feeling nervous. Why? Why? Because emotions create connection. And so we've forgotten how to prioritize connection in our relationship. We've actually prioritized who's right and who's wrong. We actually prioritize who's the bigger victim. We actually prioritize, my way is the only way. And so that's why relationships don't work, because number one, there's no education around it. It's not like we're in school and we're being taught how relationships work. We're only being told that this is the way we should live our lives. And so, yeah, look at porn. That's another thing. We grow up with the idea that being with a woman is so difficult. So why would I go there if all I can do is just either swipe on an app to sleep with whoever, either watch porn all day, And so that's another reality we're facing, another epidemic that's all intertwined, interconnected into the same essence of don't look inside, look outside. And that's how we stay stuck, because we're missing on a whole different part. I'm not saying the external world is not important. It is as equally important as what's happening inside. But if we don't go there, then we can't really understand what's happening out there.
Malcolm, that was incredible.
You're a legend, man.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen.
Where can people find more about what you do, all your work? And
yeah, well, the anyone can find me on Instagram, Rise with Malcolm. That's where most of my information is. All of the information is there, and I have so Rise with Malcolm is the movement that I've created, and within that there are two movements. One called co-creation, which is for the couples. So we just completed our third round of co-creation. We'll be launching the fourth one, I think, in September. And this is led by me and my partner, Marina. And yeah, we just offer, it's like an 8-week journey where we offer all of the foundational tools and practices to create that connection, to bring people into co-creation, not only within their relationship, but with themselves. And the second movement that I have, which is brand new, I'm actually starting it on this Sunday, the 29th, which is called the Rising Order. And this is a new men's group that I'm starting, which is a 4-month sort of container. And that's for men only, men from anywhere in the world. It's online. And so it's a 16-week journey where we go deep into a lot of things that I talked about today, and also getting into a group of men where we can support each other, challenge each other, be there for one another, uplift one another, which has been mostly the foundation of my work. I led my first men's group online for almost 4 years. It was called Rising Masculinity, and then I took a break from it, and I've started the Rising Order, which I'm really excited for. So that's going to be the first round. It's going to be 4 months, and then eventually I'm going to think of relaunching it every quarter or so.
That's amazing.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Malcolm, for coming on the show.
Of course, brothers. Thank you so much for the space. Thank you so much for, I want to just share something real quick. Right before the call, I was actually very much stuck. I was trying to write some content and nothing was coming out. And I was like, I don't know, I'm reading and I'm like, oh my God, like the energy felt stuck. And then I remembered that I had a call with you guys, and I'm like, yes, this is exactly what I need. So I'm here. Thank you for the space. Now I feel like the energy's there. It feels like I'm vibrant. I'm alive. I'm going to go right after this call. And it was just very inspiring to be here with both of you. So thank you for creating the space. Thank you also for being stewards to this work and, providing a place, a message, bringing other people in to share their message with the rest of the world, with the men that are in your ecosystem, the women as well, the kids. And thank you deeply, deeply for you, Conrad, and for you, Rupert, for choosing to say yes to yourselves and to want to be of service to others.
Thank you, brother. Honestly,
you so
so
much.
special. It's been an honor.
Of course.
Nice one, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.